Boeing Starliner spacecraft has successfully landed in the New Mexico desert. The capsule travelled back to Earth from the International Space Station without its crew. It had developed technical problems, including helium leaks, shortly after its original launch.
The Boeing Starliner spacecraft has returned to Earth, touching down in the expansive New Mexico desert. Originally set for the International Space Station, it arrived empty due to technical troubles that began shortly after its launch, including a critical helium system leak. To ensure safety, astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams were left behind on the space station, now waiting for a delayed return home in a SpaceX capsule, 8 months overdue. What does this empty return say about the challenges facing today's space missions? Minutes ago, the Boeing Starliner spacecraft landed back on Earth without any astronauts on board after technical issues cropped up just after takeoff. A ghostly voyage. Even though there were no people on board, the mission still went smoothly. The spacecraft managed to detach from the space station and re-enter Earth's atmosphere without any problems. It used a special docking system developed by NASA, which worked perfectly and is similar to the one that will be used in future missions to the Moon with the Orion spacecraft. The smooth operation of this system during the mission provided important information that will help with future space missions. As the spacecraft left the station, it performed a series of movements to safely distance itself before beginning its descent back to Earth. Keep watching, because we'll soon show you how these big changes might change our future trips to space. Despite not having a crew, the mission was still very important. It gave us a lot of information about how different parts of the spacecraft work under real conditions. There were some issues with the thrusters during the initial launch, but they worked perfectly during the return to Earth, which was a big win for the mission team. Rebecca Morale, a science editor, pointed out that while there were a few small problems with the thrusters on the way back, the overall performance was a success, showing significant progress in spacecraft technology. But this wasn't the hardest part. Wilmore and Williams were originally supposed to stay on the space station for only 8 days, but their mission has now been extended by many months. NASA has been making sure they are comfortable by sending additional cargo missions with personal items and supplies needed for their unexpected long stay. The astronauts are said to be in good spirits, staying healthy by exercising daily and continuing their scientific experiments, which help us learn more about how humans can endure long periods in space. The space station is always busy, with astronauts from different countries coming and going. Upcoming missions are planned carefully to ensure there are always enough supplies and space available for everyone, even if there are unexpected events. Managing these resources requires careful planning and flexibility, as shown by the adjustments made to ensure Wilmore and Williams have a safe return. Living in space comes with many challenges. Astronauts have to get used to having fewer personal items and limited space. Essentials like food and clothing are provided, but in smaller amounts to suit the unique conditions of space. For example, the next SpaceX mission has been adjusted to carry only 2 astronauts so that there are enough seats for Wilmore and Williams when they finally return to Earth. This shows how space missions need to be flexible and able to adapt to changing situations. But the reality of space living is even more surprising. Former NASA astronaut Dottie Metcalf Lindenberger has shared that astronauts often find themselves with more supplies than they really need. This highlights the difference between life on Earth and life in space. In space, the focus is less on material things and more on staying healthy and contributing to important scientific research. This approach helps astronauts concentrate on their vital work while ensuring they have what they need for a successful mission. The ongoing experiences of astronauts like Wilmore and Williams at the space station provide us with valuable lessons about human spaceflight. They show how adaptable humans need to be to live and work in such an extraordinary environment. These missions not only test the physical and mental endurance of the astronauts, but also challenge the technology and planning skills of space agencies around the world. All of this helps shape the future of human exploration beyond our planet. Now let's take a closer look at Boeing's past and the challenges they faced, which shaped the journey of Starliner. Ambition meets reality. The journey of the Boeing Starliner was supposed to be a big step forward in space exploration. Instead, it turned into a story of setbacks and problems. This is not just about a broken spacecraft or 2 astronauts waiting in space. It goes deeper into the issues within the world of aerospace and big companies. To understand what happened with the Starliner, we need to look at Boeing's long history and its recent challenges. Boeing has a rich past in the world of aerospace. The company has played a major role in the United States space missions for many years. They helped build important parts of the Saturn V rocket and the lunar rover, and they were deeply involved in the space shuttle program. Their expertise was not limited to spacecraft. They were also big players in both commercial and military aviation. With this strong background, it seemed like a smart move for NASA to trust them with the Starliner project. However, things began to change in the late 90s. In 1997, Boeing bought another company, McDonnell Douglas, in a deal worth billions of dollars. This merger wasn't just about money. It brought together two very different corporate cultures. Before the merger, Boeing was known for focusing on engineering, quality, and safety. After the merger, the influence of McDonnell Douglas pushed the company towards cutting costs, sometimes at the expense of the careful engineering that had made Boeing great. This shift slowly chipped away at the values that had made Boeing a leader in the aerospace industry. The Starliner, which came out of this new corporate culture, was designed to be a symbol of modern space travel. It was a partially reusable spacecraft that could transport astronauts to and from the International Space Station without a pilot's help. It was supposed to replace the retiring space shuttle fleet and become a key part of NASA's commercial crew program. The Starliner featured high-tech automation systems, but it also allowed for manual control by pilots. It had a complex propulsion system with 52 nozzles for precise movements in space, including 28 thrusters for controlling its direction and 20 more for changing speed in orbit. In case of an emergency, it could use 4 powerful rocket engines to escape from its booster rocket. But the problems started early. The changes within Boeing that put more focus on saving money than on perfecting details began to show in the Starliner project. Issues that might have been caught and fixed in the past slipped through the cracks, leading to the high-profile failures that made headlines. These were not just simple mechanical problems. They were signs of a deeper issue within the company, a shift from valuing engineering excellence to prioritizing financial gains. But this wasn't the worst part. The real impact was on trust and reputation. For NASA, counting on the Starliner meant believing in Boeing's ability to create safe and reliable spacecraft. Each problem that came up with the Starliner tested this trust. For Boeing, every failure hurt their reputation and forced them to think about their priorities and their legacy as a company known for great engineering. The Boeing Starliner spacecraft, designed with 12 extra thrusters in its crew capsule, was meant to offer better control during the critical parts of its journey back to Earth. These thrusters were supposed to help the spacecraft handle complicated tasks like docking with the International Space Station or other future outposts in space. But with so many thrusters, there was also a greater risk of something going wrong. Each thruster added another chance for a malfunction, making the mission more challenging than expected. But beyond the technical side, there were the people, the astronauts who were part of the Starliner missions. Barry Butch Wilmore and Sita Sunny Williams were the 2 astronauts chosen for the first manned mission of the Starliner. Both had a lot of experience in space. Sunny, well-liked by her colleagues and the public, had already spent more than 322 days in space over 2 missions. She also had over 50 hours of spacewalks under her belt. Before becoming an astronaut, she had an impressive career as a Navy diver and helicopter pilot during Operation Desert Shield. Butch also had a remarkable background, flying the Space Shuttle Atlantis and serving as a Navy combat pilot with 21 missions during Operation Desert Storm. For both of them, this mission was expected to be their last adventure into space, a high-stakes journey to end their outstanding careers. But this wasn't the only twist in the story. The journey of the Starliner began in 2010 when NASA gave Boeing $18 million from its Commercial Crew Development Program. This money was enough to start turning the idea of the Starliner into something real. Boeing believed the spacecraft would be ready by 2015, as long as they kept getting the funding they needed. The next year, NASA provided Boeing with one of its facilities at the Kennedy Space Center to work on and test the Starliner. Over the next few years, NASA continued to support Boeing with more rounds of funding, adding up to over $560 million. This showed NASA's strong commitment to Boeing, even as the program faced growing problems. This support from NASA was a big win for Boeing, a company used to getting regular government contracts and large amounts of funding. They even managed to secure a sole source contract from NASA meaning they didn't have to share the money with other companies. However, not everyone at NASA thought this was a good idea. William H. Gerstenmaier, who led NASA's human exploration program at the time, argued for a more competitive approach. He felt that depending on just one company for the commercial crew program was too risky and pushed for more funding to support other companies as well. In 2014, NASA changed its approach and decided that both Boeing and SpaceX would develop their crew vehicles under fixed-price contracts. Boeing received $4.2 billion, while SpaceX, seen as the underdog then, got $2.6 billion to work on their Crew Dragon. The rules were simple. To fulfill the contract, each company needed to complete a series of tests and missions, including an abort test, an uncrewed flight test, a crewed flight test, and 6 missions to the ISS. But things didn't go as planned for Boeing. The Starliner wasn't ready for its uncrewed test flights until 2019, several years after the original deadline. This delay highlighted the big shift Boeing had to make, from a model where they could bill the government for all costs plus a profit margin, to a fixed-price model where they had to watch every dollar they spent. This new way of handling money was a major change for Boeing, which was used to more flexible funding methods. But this wasn't the worst part. The delays and problems with the Starliner program showed just how complicated space travel can be. It's not just about the technology or the money. It's also about the bravery and dedication of the people involved. Butch and Sunny, the astronauts chosen for the mission, represent this human spirit. They are seasoned professionals who know the risks, but are still willing to push forward for the sake of exploration. Their readiness to take on these challenges shows the resilience and courage that space exploration demands. As they get ready for what might be their last mission, their story reminds us of the daring spirit needed to push the boundaries of what is possible in space. Next, as Starliner took off, it faced immediate problems that tested the limits of space technology. Clock error chaos. When the Boeing Starliner launched on an Atlas V rocket in December of 2019, it was supposed to be a great example of modern space success. However, almost right after reaching space, things started to go wrong. A small but very important mistake happened. The spacecraft's mission clock was not set correctly. This error caused the Starliner to lose track of time by 11 hours, which messed up its planned movements. Instead of firing its thrusters to get in line with the International Space Station, the Starliner drifted off course. Because of this timing mistake, the team tried to fix its orbit, but it was too late. By that time, the Starliner had already used more fuel than expected, so there wasn't enough left to safely reach and dock with the International Space Station. In an ironic twist, this delay turned out to be somewhat lucky. Just 2 hours before the decision was made to bring the Starliner back to Earth, Boeing engineers found another serious software problem. This new issue could have led to a dangerous crash between the crew capsule and the service module. Thankfully, this disaster was narrowly avoided, but NASA later called the mission a close call that was very hard to ignore. After it returned to Earth, astronaut Sonny Williams gave the capsule a new name, Calypso, after a character in Homer's Odyssey. The name seemed fitting, not only because of the spacecraft's unexpected journey, but also because Calypso is a type of music known for its improvisation and making things up as they go. This seemed like a good way to describe how the Starliner's problems were handled, solving issues one step at a time. But these first problems with the Starliner weren't just simple software errors that could be easily fixed. They pointed to bigger, deeper issues within the program. Even before this, in 2018, there were warning signs. During a test of the Starliner's emergency escape engines, serious problems showed up. The test ended badly when several fuel valves got stuck open, releasing thousands of pounds of dangerous fuel and causing a fiery explosion. This was a big warning that showed that there were serious design and building flaws that hadn't been fully addressed. Boeing's engines were developed with Aerojet Rocketdyne, a company with a long history in space, known for the engines that powered the Saturn V and the Space Shuttle missions. With this kind of experience, the repeated problems with what should have been a simple thruster system were both confusing and disappointing. But this wasn't the worst part. In 2021, after 2 years of rewriting software and reworking the systems, the Starliner was ready for another try. But during the checks before the launch, 13 of the fuel valves in the engine system failed. Attempts to fix these problems at the launch site didn't work, so the rocket had to be moved back for more inspections. The investigation showed that moisture had mixed with the fuel and caused the valves to rust and get stuck. This led to a lot of blame being thrown back and forth between Boeing and Aerojet Rocketdyne. Each side accused the other of poor manufacturing and bad project management. This was a far cry from the teamwork that had once sent humans to the moon. These setbacks with the Starliner project highlighted big challenges in space travel, where new technology meets the tough realities of science and human mistakes. The situation was made worse by business pressures, where the push to save money often clashed with the need for safety and careful engineering. These problems were a sign of a larger struggle in the industry to find the right balance between being innovative and being safe, between cutting costs and keeping capabilities strong, and between having big dreams and doing things practically. In 2014, when NASA awarded the commercial crew contract, it also selected a group of 4 experienced astronauts: Bob Behnken, Eric Boe, Doug Hurley, and Sunita Williams, to work with the engineers at Boeing and SpaceX. This decision was made to bridge the gap between those who design the spacecraft and those who actually fly them. Doug Hurley, one of the astronauts, noticed a clear difference in how the two companies worked with their astronaut consultants. SpaceX was open and eager for feedback, while Boeing seemed dismissive and overly confident. This attitude did not sit well with the astronauts. Hurley found Boeing's approach troubling, especially when they failed to communicate about serious issues, like a propellant leak during an important test. This lack of openness and what seemed like arrogance led Hurley to decide against flying on the Starliner. Instead, he and Bob Behnken would later pilot SpaceX's Crew Dragon on its first manned mission to the International Space Station in 2020. A significant achievement for SpaceX. But this wasn't the worst part. In May of 2022, Starliner was back, attempting to reach orbit again. It successfully launched on an Atlas V booster, but it ran into problems almost right away. 2 of its main thrusters failed during a critical burn needed to get into orbit. Fortunately, the spacecraft was designed with multiple backup systems, so this didn't end the mission. The remaining thrusters, along with smaller ones, managed to make up for the failure. However, the problems didn't stop there. More thrusters failed during the docking process with the International Space Station due to low pressure in the fuel chambers. Even with these issues, Starliner managed to dock with the ISS. The mission wasn't perfect. It didn't meet the high standards set by SpaceX, but it was still considered a success given the circumstances. However, it was clear that Boeing's spacecraft was still struggling with reliability, though there was hope these problems could be fixed with more time and testing. By May of 2024, astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams, both seasoned by many missions, found themselves aboard the Starliner again, now called Calypso. But their planned test flight was canceled because of a problem with an oxygen valve on the Atlas rocket. This delay turned out to be fortunate, as another issue soon appeared with the Starliner's helium gas system, causing further delays. When they finally launched in June of 2024, their mission was to test the Starliner's maneuvering systems, both through automatic controls and manual operations. But this wasn't the end of the problems. The testing revealed that 5 of the smaller thrusters were not performing well and were flagged as damaged by the spacecraft's software. On top of that, there were leaks in the helium system, which is vital for keeping the propulsion system under the right pressure. Helium, being very light and non-reactive, is perfect for space missions, but it is also very hard to contain. As more thrusters failed, the Starliner's ability to move safely was at risk. The spacecraft hovered just out of reach of the ISS, putting Wilmore and Williams in a difficult situation. Thankfully, ground engineers were able to fix the problem remotely and bring 4 of the disabled thrusters back online, allowing for a successful docking with the ISS. But this wasn't the final challenge. The many malfunctions and delays meant that Wilmore and Williams had to stay on the ISS longer than planned. NASA and Boeing continued to work from Earth, trying to understand the issues with the thrusters. The astronauts ran more tests firing the thrusters to gather data, but the root cause of the failures remained a mystery. This whole story shows just how complicated spaceflight can be and the challenges of building reliable spacecraft. It also highlights a larger issue in the aerospace world, the need to focus again on engineering excellence instead of cutting costs and keeping shareholders happy. The story of Starliner is an example of how business pressures in corporate culture can affect the safety and quality of space missions. The ongoing problems with Starliner not only impact the astronauts involved, but also have wider effects on NASA's partnerships and the future of American space travel. As Boeing prepares for another try, the space community is watching closely, hoping that the lessons learned from these challenges will lead to better and safer ways to explore space. One might wonder if corporate profit motives are compromising the safety of astronauts. Please share thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more updates on this unfolding story.